Welcome back to True Crime Pulse. Today's story is filled with betrayal, obsession, and murder. The life of a woman named Shawna would be forever changed by a horrific crime. This is the chilling tale of Shawna Nelson and the tragic murder of Heather Garraus, one that would unravel the secrets of a close-knit community and reveal a web of lies and deceit. What drove Shawna to kill? Was it love, jealousy, or something far darker? And who else was involved in the shocking conspiracy that led to Heather's death? Stay tuned as we dive deep into the case that stunned everyone. From a twisted relationship to a betrayal that would change everything, this is a story of a murder, a trial, and the hidden truths that came to light. You won't believe the shocking twists and turns that this case took. Grab a seat, because this is a story you don't want to miss. Welcome to today's true crime investigation. On a bitterly cold night, Heather wrapped up her long shift and made her way to the dimly lit parking lot alongside her co-workers. Their chatter, filled with light-hearted comments about work and plans for the weekend, echoed faintly in the night. They exchanged their goodbyes, unaware that something sinister was about to unfold. Out of the shadows, a figure clad in black and wearing a mask emerged with startling speed, breaking the tranquility of the evening. The masked intruder moved with a chilling purpose, confronting Heather directly. The scene that followed felt surreal, as though ripped from the pages of a thriller. Forced to kneel on the cold asphalt, Heather listened in horror as the figure accused her of destroying their life. Before anyone could react, two sharp gunshots shattered the stillness, reverberating through the icy air and leaving an eerie silence in their wake. Heather Lynn Hodges was born on February 8, 1969, in Colorado, to William Fitzgerald and Linda Joan. She spent her childhood and teenage years in Boulder, a picturesque town nestled against the Rocky Mountains. Her family included her younger sister Wendy, with whom she shared a close bond. Heather was known for her striking physical beauty, which was marked by her fair skin and dark hair, as well as her generous and kind-hearted nature. Friends and family admired her unwavering sense of duty and her innate desire to put others' needs before her own. After graduating from high school, Heather attended the University of Northern Colorado. The transition marked a significant milestone in her life, as she left the comfort of her hometown to live in a shared apartment with fellow students. Despite the challenges of adjusting to a new environment, Heather thrived academically, excelling in her studies while forming deep and lasting friendships. It was during this transformative period that she met Ignacio Garraus at a university party. Ignacio's magnetic personality and charm quickly captivated Heather, and the feeling was mutual. He was taken by her grace, intelligence, and beauty, affectionately nicknaming her Snow White for her fair complexion and striking dark hair. Their connection was instant and profound, and in 1988, Ignacio asked Heather out on a date. Heather, who had little experience with romance until then, was both excited and nervous as she shared the news with her roommates. Ignacio proved to be even more charismatic than she had imagined, showering her with thoughtful gestures and surprising her with her favorite flowers. Their romance blossomed, and after graduating from university, the couple married on July 27, 1991. Heather proudly adopted Ignacio's last name, becoming Heather Garraus. From the outset, she made it clear that she valued trust above all else, warning Ignacio that she would not tolerate infidelity under any circumstances. The newlyweds settled in Greeley, Colorado, where Ignacio began a demanding career as a law enforcement officer, while Heather became a supervisor at a local credit union. Her exceptional customer service skills earned her the respect and admiration of her colleagues and clients alike. In 1997, their lives seemed idyllic. They welcomed their only daughter, Victoria, on May 20th that year. Heather embraced motherhood with boundless energy and dedication, while Ignacio took pride in his role as a father. However, their happiness was soon overshadowed by tragedy. That same year, Heather's father, William, passed away suddenly from a heart attack. The loss was a heavy blow, compounded by the news of her mother Linda's cancer diagnosis shortly thereafter. Heather devoted herself to caring for her ailing mother, demonstrating the same selflessness and strength that had always defined her. Ignacio supported her during this difficult time, stepping in to care for their young daughter when Heather's focus was elsewhere. Despite their efforts, Linda succumbed to her illness in 2003, leaving Heather heartbroken. In the months that followed, cracks began to appear in their marriage. Ignacio, once steadfast in his commitment, grew distant and distracted. His attention turned to a colleague, Shawna Nelson, a 911 dispatcher with a tumultuous past. Shawna's childhood was marked by abandonment when her biological mother handed her over to a relative to raise her. Despite the hardships, Shawna thrived professionally and personally, marrying Ken Nelson, a popular sheriff's deputy, and balancing a demanding career with raising their 2 children. Ignacio and Shawna's relationship began innocently enough, with casual conversations about work. However, their exchanges soon turned more intimate as they confided in each other about their marital struggles. In July 2004, their connection crossed a line, becoming a full-blown affair. Within the close-knit circles of law enforcement and emergency services, their relationship quickly became an open secret. Shawna assured Ignacio that she was on birth control, but when she became pregnant, Ignacio insisted on terminating the pregnancy. Reluctantly, Shawna agreed, and Ignacio worked tirelessly to conceal the affair from Heather. As the affair continued, Shawna's marriage to Ken deteriorated. Ken noticed Shawna had been distant for some time, but didn't say a word. Discovering her infidelity, Ken filed for divorce. This move prompted Shawna to move into an apartment with their children. Shawna maintained her friendship with a colleague, Michelle Moore, and continued her affair with Ignacio, even as he made it clear he would never leave Heather. For Ignacio, the affair was a dangerous and exhilarating escape, while for Shawna, it became a source of hope for a future together, one that Ignacio never truly intended to pursue. For Shawna, her relationship with Ignacio was not a fleeting romance, it was her vision of a shared future, a bond she believed could withstand the obstacles in their path. Ignacio, however, viewed their affair differently. Despite claiming to value his marriage, he continually postponed breaking things off with Shawna, reveling in the excitement and escapism their secret connection offered. But in July 2005, Shawna dropped a bombshell: she was pregnant again. When Ignacio begged her not to keep the baby, Shawna met his plea with firm defiance. This time she was resolute. She informed him that she intended to keep the child and reconcile with her estranged husband, Ken, who had remarkably offered to raise the baby as his own. For Shawna, this was a turning point, one where she began to see Ignacio's reluctance as a betrayal of the future she had envisioned for them. In March 2006, she gave birth to a son, Christian, a milestone that solidified her determination to move forward on her terms. By December 2006, Ignacio, feeling the weight of his actions, took steps to cut ties with Shawna. He appeared at a court hearing to renounce his parental rights, a decision he hoped would finally sever their connection. Meanwhile, Heather, devoted to her work and family, began hearing whispers about the baby. The rumors gnawed at her, and she confronted Ignacio directly. Cornered, he denied the affair, attempting to maintain the fragile facade of their marriage. Shawna, despite moving back with Ken, still had feelings for Ignacio and wished they had been together to maintain a proper family. If anything, her obsession deepened. Convinced that she was the only woman truly suited for him, Shawna's anger toward Heather grew into an all-consuming rage. She began making uninvited visits to the Garraus home, her presence a silent declaration of her unrelenting fixation. On one occasion, in a symbolic act of spite, she scattered nails across their driveway. To her confidante Michelle, Shawna openly expressed her hatred for Heather, labeling her as the obstacle preventing her from claiming the life she deserved. In her mind, Heather wasn't just Ignacio's wife, she was the enemy. Ignacio, sensing the danger, attempted to distance himself further. He refused to respond to Shawna's increasingly desperate messages, instructing her to contact him only through his lawyer regarding legal matters. But Shawna refused to let go. In one particularly emotional email, she declared that she felt dead inside, blaming Ignacio for her despair while professing her undying love for him. Her words revealed a woman on the brink, torn between heartbreak and an unyielding determination to regain what she believed was rightfully hers. Fearful of what Shawna might do next, Ignacio finally confessed the affair to Heather. The revelation shattered her. Overwhelmed, she turned to her sister Wendy, who came to her aid, offering comfort and a temporary escape. After spending a night away to gather her thoughts, Heather returned, ready to confront the situation head-on. In a heartfelt conversation, she and Ignacio agreed to fight for their marriage, but only if he ended things with Shawna immediately and decisively. To prove his commitment, Ignacio called Shawna in Heather's presence and broke off the relationship. The act enraged Shawna. Her messages turned venomous, filled with threats and accusations, yet Heather dismissed them as the empty rantings of a desperate woman. However, Shawna's resolve had reached a dangerous level. To her, Heather's dismissal was not just an insult, it was a challenge. Shawna began meticulously planning her revenge. She confided in Michelle, sharing every detail of her scheme. They discussed disguises, gloves, and ways to eliminate evidence, ensuring that the crime would look like the work of a stranger. Shawna even decided to use her husband's truck to avoid suspicion. To mask her identity further, she practiced lowering her voice, determined to sound unrecognizable. Meanwhile, Ignacio, increasingly alarmed by her erratic behavior, started saving her messages and altered his phone settings to display her number, as Omar hoping to conceal her identity from Heather. As tensions mounted, Heather found a gum wrapper in her car with a chilling death threat scrawled on it. Though she told no one, the incident unsettled her deeply. She began to sense the dangerous lengths Shawna might go to in her obsession. On January 23, 2007, the day unfolded like any other. Heather picked up her daughter from school, brought her to work, and continued her shift. Later that evening, as Heather walked to her car after finishing her shift, the cold winter air was pierced by a figure emerging from the shadows. Dressed in a mask and a black robe, the figure approached Heather and her colleagues as they chatted in the parking lot. What happened next unfolded in a blur, like a scene from a nightmare. The masked assailant forced Heather to kneel, her voice filled with venom as she accused Heather of destroying her life. In an instant, 2 gunshots rang out, echoing in the frigid night. Heather's lifeless body fell to the ground, marking the tragic culmination of Shawna's twisted vendetta, a harrowing end to a tale of obsession, betrayal, and irrevocable loss. After the attack, the assailant fled the scene. Nearby, a woman sitting in a bar noticed a mysterious figure running past. Still in shock, a witness chased after her coworker Brad Mitchell's car, begging him to call 911. It was only then that she noticed Heather lying on the ground and made the emergency call herself. Shortly after, paramedics arrived, but it was too late. Heather was pronounced dead at the scene. The police arrived swiftly, with the first officer immediately calling for backup upon seeing the horrifying scene. While waiting for the crime scene unit, the officer interviewed Melinda, Heather's coworker, who had witnessed everything. Melinda didn't hesitate to name Shawna as the attacker. Meanwhile, bar patrons gathered nearby, describing the suspect as a hooded woman driving a green Ford truck with blue license plates. Acting on these leads, the police began their search for Shawna. At the police station, Ken was in a briefing when he received the shocking news that his wife was a suspect in the attack. Fearing for his children's safety, Ken rushed home with a colleague. As they approached, Ken spotted Shawna driving their truck. Jumping out of his friend's car, he blocked her path and confronted her, demanding to know what she had done and where their children were. Concerned that Ken might hurt Shawna, his colleague intervened and restrained him. Shawna exited the truck, losing her shoes in the snow in the process. Later investigations revealed a gun on the truck's passenger seat, which Ken quickly removed and handed over to his superiors. Meanwhile, Heather's body was taken to the hospital, and coworkers contacted another employee, Sarah Staley, who relayed the devastating news to Heather's husband, Ignacio. Distraught, Ignacio rushed to the hospital with their daughter, only to learn Heather had died. Back at the police station, Shawna was apprehended while wearing inappropriate attire for the icy conditioned socks, black sweatpants, a long sweater, and a sleeveless lavender shirt. Claiming she had only taken the truck to buy wine, Shawna protested her treatment but was taken into custody for questioning. At the crime scene, investigators found bullet casings and tire marks, while the autopsy revealed 2 fatal gunshot wounds, one grazing Heather's back and another to her left temple. Ballistics analysis matched the weapon to Ken's gun, though he had been at work during the attack and had surrendered the gun to his superiors. Despite this, he was charged with attempting to dispose of the murder weapon. Forensic analysis of the truck revealed gunpowder residue, Shawna's cell phone, a yellow rubber glove, and a black hooded mask bearing her DNA. The following day, a pair of shoes matching Shawna's was discovered in a nearby snowbank. Investigators documented the evidence before taking photographs of the scene. a forensic consultant specializing in tire tracks confirmed that the tire marks at the crime scene matched those from the truck Shawna was driving. With such incriminating evidence, Shawna was charged with first-degree murder and held in custody. Authorities questioned her friends and colleagues, including Michelle, who denied any knowledge of ill intent toward Heather. In the months that followed, Shawna attempted to deflect blame, accusing both Ignacio and later Ken, though the charges against Ken were eventually dropped. In November 2007, just before the trial, police arrested Michelle, charging her with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and criminal attempt to commit first-degree murder. This delayed the trial, giving Michelle time to negotiate a plea deal in exchange for her testimony against Shawna. Michelle agreed to cooperate, receiving a lesser charge of complicity. Due to pretrial publicity, the trial was relocated to a neighboring county. On February 21, 2008, Shawna's trial began. Key witnesses, including Ignacio, the officer who found the shoes, Ken, and Michelle testified. When Shawna took the stand in her defense, she claimed she and Michelle were lovers and suggested Michelle's testimony was motivated by revenge. Michelle denied this, asserting their relationship was purely platonic. Prosecutors maintained that Shawna was the only one with a motive to kill Heather and urged the jury to convict her. On March 3, 2008, after a day of deliberation, the jury found Shawna guilty of Heather Garraus's murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. During Michelle's trial the following month, prosecutors argued that she had opportunities to prevent the crime but instead aided Shawna. Michelle, then 27, was sentenced to 9 years in prison with an additional 3 years of mandatory parole. Ken later divorced Shawna and relocated with their children, while Ignacio resigned from the police force and moved to Florida with Victoria. Shawna continued to claim she had been framed, appealing her conviction, though her appeals were denied. As the years passed, Shawna spent her days in the Denver Women's Correctional Facility, serving her life sentence without the possibility of parole. Despite her attempts to claim innocence, her fate was sealed by the overwhelming evidence and the testimonies that painted her as the sole perpetrator of Heather's murder. The tragedy didn't end with Shawna's conviction. Victoria Garraus, Heather's daughter, was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. She tried to move on, pursuing her dreams in technology and a career she loved, but life, it seemed, had more pain to give. On March 13, 2015, just 2 years after the trial, tragedy struck again. Victoria, at just 17 years old, lost her life in a car accident. Her death, sudden and heartbreaking, was a cruel reminder of how the Garraus family was torn apart by violence and loss. As for Shawna, her obsession and desperation had led her to commit an irreversible act, forever changing the lives of those around her. But in the end, no amount of revenge or deflection could erase the pain she had caused. Shawna's life behind bars continues, but for those she left behind, the scars of betrayal, loss, and tragedy remain. The story of Heather Garraus and her family is a painful reminder of how a moment of rage can shatter not just one life, but many. Thank you for joining us on this haunting journey. If you were moved by this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime investigations.